You're watching Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner, here today, Fox Business Network's Dagen McDowell, Republican strategist and senior fellow for the Independent Women's Voice, Lisa Boothe, syndicated radio talk show host and Fox News contributor, Leslie Marshall, and in the center seat, Fox News senior judicial analyst, Judge Andrew Napolitano. We say he's outnumbered. We also affectionately call him Judge Naps.
Happily outnumbered. Good morning. Good afternoon, everybody. Pleasure
Good afternoon.
to be here.
You ready to get with
Yes,
it? We need your
about.
expertise.
Impeachment?
Let's do it. So impeachment now off the table, at least for this session. Maybe it'll pop back up after. You roll your eyes at this, though. Why?
Well, I do roll my eyes at this because impeachment is such a draconian measure, and it's not authorized here. The Constitution lays out the grounds for impeachment. Two very specific grounds: treason or bribery. Obviously not the case here. And then an amorphous phrase, which has been defined by the courts and by Congress, as high crimes and misdemeanors. High crimes and misdemeanors means some criminal event committed by the person they want to impeach that strikes at the security of the republic. Failing to recuse yourself on a law enforcement issue that you're supervising and where you might be a witness is at best an ethical violation between the lawyer and the ethics monitors of the District of Columbia Bar or wherever he's licensed. It is not an impeachable offense. So they are really going way overboard. But there's a backstory here. The backstory is when Eric Holder was the Attorney General and they wanted documents from him on Fast and Furious. Remember that? And he didn't produce him. The House of Representatives produced the documents. The House of Representatives held Attorney General Holder in contempt. And nothing happened. Nothing. They should have taken that contempt citation across the street to a federal judge and had him prosecuted. But nothing happened. So they have a history of doing nothing when they can't get what they're trying to get.
I'm going to get Leslie in here because I want to hear what Democrats have to say. Leslie?
I agree with you on this.
We're on the same side on this.
Yeah, we are, because, I mean, the Constitution to our nation is like the Bible is to religion, especially Christianity. And when you reread Section 4, Article 2, to your point, when you're talking about high crimes and misdemeanors, you were in a sense putting it in a sentence, even though they're not specifying, with treason, with bribery. This does not fit, in my opinion, the litmus test constitutionally of high crimes and misdemeanors. One, they have 11 people. They need a majority of the House, 2/3 of the Senate. This is going nowhere. It's not just frustration.
I'm reading, though, Leslie, if they can get to the protocol on this, if they can get back to the rule of order, if they can do the things that they need to do, they'll get more than those 11 people. In fact, what the leadership are saying, they fully expect that. We've been talking about House leadership, so here it is. Representative Jim Jordan, this is per our reporting, Chad Pergram, our producer on the Hill. Jim Jordan, Republican of Ohio, is running for Speaker of the House in the new Congress.
Of those three votes, Scalise, McCarthy, Jordan will determine who the Speaker is by where he throws his support.
That's a good point.
Okay.
I agree with Dagen because I'm into reality and those numbers are realistic. And I agree with you, Lisa. What is this, one time in 2 years?
It's not going to be
Jim Jordan. I know we're not talking about that elephant in the room, but there's some very nasty allegations against him coming out of Ohio, and I don't think some Republicans are going to go near him because of that.
I don't know why anyone wants this job, though.
They're allegations.
Being Speaker of the House, this is the worst job ever. Trying to wrangle the party and keep everyone together. Paul Ryan basically had to be begged to take this job. I'm surprised anyone wants it, to be honest.
I just want to stay on the allegations from 30 years ago about when he was an assistant wrestling coach at Ohio State University, about what he did or didn't know about sexual abuse. By running for this, you're asking for the press to basically continue to dig through your garbage in your private life. Rightly or wrongly, that's what's going to happen.
Here's the other elephant in the room.
This Fox News alert. New reaction to the Secretary of State on Capitol Hill after the White House announced that another summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin will be delayed until next year. White House National Security Advisor John Bolton saying, quote, the president believes that the next bilateral meeting with President Putin should take place after the Russia witch hunt is over. So we've agreed that it will be after the first of the year. But let me stop you there. I'm going to channel my best Melissa Francis and say it's the walk, not the talk. And the walk is that Mike Pompeo said the U.S. doesn't recognize Russia's annexing of Crimea. Sanctions won't be relieved until Russia leaves Crimea. Our approach has been the same, to steadily raise the cost of aggression until Putin chooses a less confrontational
That's the
policy.
right thing to do.
And there could be additional targeted sanctions that would prove
But
useful.
the problem is, and I hear you on the walk and I hear you on the talk, but prior to the Secretary of State saying that, I think that the American people, regardless of their party, were very confused. The president said, and I quote, "Crimea is Russian." The president says that he didn't see any reason why Russia was responsible for hacking the elections in 2016. On one day, on another day, he says something else, which is very confusing to the American people and confusing as to where does his loyalty lie if you're attacking our intelligence agencies, but you're applauding a guy who gives them a soccer ball with a transmitter in it.
But Harris, where I grew up, we say money talks and walks.
Well, the American people look to him to be the leader of this nation.
Sanctions are money. Sanctions are hitting them where it hurts. Sanctions that we put in place earlier this year were on Putin's cronies and their businesses.
So
and then we invite him to our
This comes one day after agreed with the president of the European Union for both sides to pull back from a trade war. Here's the president yesterday.
We agreed today, first of all, to work together towards zero tariffs, zero non-tariff barriers, and zero subsidies on non-auto industrial goods. Thank you. And the European Union is going to start almost immediately to buy a lot of soybeans. They're a tremendous market. Buy a lot of soybeans from our farmers.
You just described the president's base in the Rust Belt and the Corn Belt, and he cannot afford to antagonize them by making their businesses less profitable and their household expenses more costly if he hopes to keep the House of Representatives in November.
Dairy farmers there, said to me yesterday on the air that, you cannot alienate those Trump supporters because they hinged on the very issue of jobs.
Right.
And so if you kill what their livelihood is, they'll hinge right back and become more independent, potentially in Les Marshall's camp if they can get out of socialism. We'll have to see if that can work. You know what I find interesting about Democrats right now, though?
Do the Democrats want the tariffs because it'll bring them votes?
No, the Democrats have wanted tariffs, quite frankly, for years. I mean, if you listen to the union messages, and Democrats are very pro-union, they have been screaming for over a decade. We have been in a trade war for over a decade. We have had a deficit, a trade deficit, which does not benefit the United States. I agree with you with regarding China. They're our number one enemy, if you will, with regard to trade. And I think that we need this power with the EU. And both sides benefited yesterday because the United States needs the EU.
I was going to say, I thought the Democrats were interesting on this because they were kind of letting the Republicans battle it out in those states where the president has such a wide base. Breaking news now, and this reporting happening by the New York Times. Robert Mueller in his Russia investigation now widening the scope yet again to include now the president's tweets. He's looking at obstruction in his inquiry. And what he's looking at is the tweets that the president has put out against former FBI Director James Comey and Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Those now are coming into play for the Robert Mueller investigation, according to the New York Times. Judge Andrew Napolitano is right on time, as always, with breaking news. And I have heard you say, well, they're not really looked at by anyone. They are kind of a thing that the president puts out. That actually has changed on the record, as far as we know, in recent weeks.
Yes.
These would be older than that.
Right. The Supreme Court, we talked about this during the break, when it upheld the president's travel ban, decided not to look at his statements as a candidate. That we know. The court's not going to look at what a person said before the president. Will the court look at, if there is litigation over this, what the man says as president? Yes, Bob Mueller knows that those tweets are a treasure trove and a window into Donald Trump's thinking. So here's the allegation. And apparently this story is true because Rudy Giuliani, the president's chief lawyer, has verified it because he's quoted by the New York Times as having spoken to them about it. The allegation is this. Did the president send messages to people of threats or rewards via his tweets. People whom he knew or expected would be interviewed by Bob Mueller. And if he did, was he engaging in witness tampering, which is an independent crime? It's a species, it's a part of obstruction of justice.
Well, we know all about that with Paul Manafort.
Yes. Yes, so that's what the New York Times is breaking, and that's what we're talking about here.
But
that's
James
not what
Comey's
this New York Times piece is about. The New York Times piece is about examining anew the tweets and whether what appear to us to be the president's tweets are actually messages to human beings that he knows are going to testify, and do those messages contain a threat or a reward? If they do, that could be witness tampering. That's at least what the New York Times is saying.
I wanted to ask you, Judge. I wanted to ask you, in addition to public attacks, which we have seen by the president on Twitter, does it pose a problem for the president that there have been tweeted his offers of pardons and also ideas of pardons surrounding individuals?
Look, the president
can
can pardon whoever he wants for any federal crime, even a federal crime not yet committed, as in the Richard Nixon case. The issue is there a pattern in these pardons intended to send a message to people who are going to testify against the president before Bob Mueller's grand jury, and will he influence that testimony?